The president of Ukraine, who has as much courage as he has determination. Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin. I wouldn't have picked Vice President Trump to be vice president, but I think she was not qualified to be president. The limits I've acknowledged I have.
There's been reporting that you've acknowledged that you need to go to bed earlier and your evening around 8.
That's not true. Look, remember the balloon, quote unquote, going down? There's a direct line between she and me. I'm following the advice of my commander-in-chief. I'm catching hell from my wife. I mean, my numbers are better in Israel than they are here. I'm going to go to South Korea. We're going to get the chip. What are you doing?
Well, Joe Biden held his big boy press conference.
After that, the president will hold a press conference. I guess a big boy press conference is what we're calling it, and take some questions from y'all.
Hold a press conference, a big boy press conference.
And before the press conference, he did this.
And now I want to hand it over to the president of Ukraine, who has as much courage as he has determination. Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin. President Putin. He's going to beat President Putin. President Zelensky. I'm so focused on beating Putin, we got to worry about it. Anyway, Mr. President.
I'm better.
You are a hell of a lot better.
Because Biden only does propaganda interviews and press conferences, there was a pre-selected list of reporters allowed to ask questions, and I would bet money that the administration was aware of exactly what the questions would be.
With that, I'll take your questions. I've been given a list of people to call on here.
The entire point of holding this press conference was to somehow convince the Democrat voter base that Biden is not a senile puppet president. But on the very first question, he answered by saying how confident he is in the vice president, Donald Trump.
What concerns do you have about Vice President Harris's ability to beat Donald Trump if she were at the top of the ticket?
Look, I wouldn't have picked Vice President Trump to be vice president, but I think she was not qualified to be president. So let's start there.
And this was the reaction from his team of propagandists when he talked about Vice President Trump.
I wouldn't have picked Vice President Trump to be vice president, but I think she was not qualified to be president. So let's start there. Number one. The fact is that
Overall, this press conference was no different than a usual Biden appearance. He slurred his words, barely able to complete full sentences, made multiple gaffes, and pushed false narratives about the so-called successes of his administration. But that didn't stop Rachel Maddow and Chris Coons from bootlicking for the resident-in-chief.
Chris, and I won't go on at length. I will just say, though, you noted that there were some moments of, startlingly impressive command of the issues. This is just my opinion. He is not only strong on foreign policy, he is just fundamentally right on foreign policy in the way that he talks about it. And again, your mileage may vary. That is how I feel about the way he talks about our relationship with our allies and our relationship with NATO. You can hear his command of the issues, particularly in his asides.
Are you still riding with Biden this morning after the press conference?
Absolutely. Look, Sarah, that was an impressive hour-long press conference.
I wanted to ask you about your, you mixed up Presidents Zelensky and Putin earlier today. And you now have sort of your key allies, including the British Prime Minister, the President of France, the German Chancellor having to step in and make excuses for you on that. Officials here are saying off the record that your decline has become noticeable. Hasn't this now, frankly, become damaging for America's standing in the world? Thank you.
Did you see any damage to our standing in my leading this conference? Have you seen a more successful conference? What do you think? And the Putin piece, I was talking about Putin, and I said, and now, at the very end, I said, Putin. I said, no, I'm sorry, it's Zelensky. And then I added 5 other names. Look, guys, the idea anybody suggests that we haven't had an incredibly successful conference. How many times did you hear in that conference, I know it sounds too self-serving, but other leaders, heads of state, in thanking me, saying the reason we're together is because of Biden, because Biden did the following. Look, folks, this is well, anyway, and I might add, there are at least 5 presidents running or incumbent presidents who had lower numbers than I have now, later in the campaign.
This is previous incumbents seeking re-election like Biden is now. Where were they in our poll at this same point, at the start of their re-election year? And you could see a big difference. George W. Bush, 54% approval. He won re-election in 2004. Barack Obama, 49, won re-election. Trump was at 46 at the start of 2020, lost re-election. And here's Biden, 9 points under where Trump was. The only two incumbents seeking re-election who have a number this low or even lower. You got to go back to George Bush Sr. in 92, Jimmy Carter in 1980. Those are not good precedents if you're the Biden White House.
We're going to make sure that rents are kept at 5% increase. Corporate rents for apartments and the like and homes are limited to 5%. And guess what? Find me an economist, a mainstream economist, who said we haven't done well. What have we not done that isn't working right now?
So this is kind of like bragging. My son was elected to the, Central American ice hockey team. It's silly. Right now, the competition is pretty poor. But what's really disturbing is how much of this growth in jobs is in the public sector or subsidized by the public sector, and is consequently built on all the borrowing we're doing. The deficit is so much larger. Basically, you've got an economy on speed, not an economy with healthy growth. And sooner or later, that comes back to bite you. Ask the Chinese, ask the Japanese, ask the Germans and the French. This comes back to bite you.
How can you say you'll be up for that next year, in 2 years, in 4 years, given the limits you've acknowledged that you have today?
The limits I've acknowledged I have?
There's been reporting that you've acknowledged that you need to go to bed earlier and your evening around 8.
That's not true. Look, what I said was, instead of my every day starting at 7 and going to bed at midnight, it'd be smarter for me to pace myself a little more. And I said, for example, the 8, 7, 6 stuff, instead of starting a fundraiser at 9 o'clock, start at 8 o'clock. People get to go home by 10 o'clock. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about. And if you looked at my schedule since I made that stupid mistake in the campaign, in the debate, I mean, my schedule has been full bore. And we've reestablished direct contact with China after that. Remember the balloon, quote unquote, going down, and all of a sudden things came to an end? Well, we set up a new mechanism. There's a direct line between Xi and me. I'm following the advice of my commander-in-chief, the chief of staff of the military, as well as the Secretary of Defense and our intelligence people. I love my staff, but they add things all the time. At the very end, I'm catching hell from my wife for that. Anyway, if I slow down, I can't get the job done. That's a sign that I shouldn't be doing it. But there's no indication of that yet. None. Who I got here? Where the access to that market was enticing enough to get companies to come in because they had access to over 1 billion people in a market, not 1 billion, but a lot of people in the market. And so they were doing it. And I think you'll see that some of our European friends are going to be curtailing their investment in Russia. In China, as long as China continues to have this indirect help to Russia in terms of being able to help their economy as well as help them in, as a consequence of that, their ability to fight in Ukraine. Look, like I said, I'm dealing with Xi right now and direct contact with him. I have no good reason to talk to Putin right now. There's not much that he is prepared to do in terms of accommodating any change in his behavior. But there isn't any world leader I'm not prepared to deal with. But I understand the generic point is Putin ready to talk? I'm not ready to talk to Putin. unless Putin's ready to change his behavior. And the idea, look, Putin's got a problem. I mean, my numbers are better in Israel than they are here. But then again, they're better than a lot of other people here too. But anyway.
You referred to yourself as being a bridge candidate for a younger, fresher generation of Democratic leaders, and I wanted to know what changed.
What changed was the gravity of the situation I inherited in terms of the economy, our foreign policy, and domestic division. And I think, I won't put words in anybody's mouth, most presidential historians give me credit for having accomplished more than most any president since Johnson and maybe before that to get major pieces of legislation passed. And what I realized was my long time in the Senate had equipped me to have the wisdom to know how to deal with the Congress to get things done. We got more major legislation passed that no one thought would happen. And I want to finish it, to get that finished. If tomorrow, if we had a circumstance where there was a lineup and I hadn't inherited what I did and we just moved things along, anyway, it's going to change. We're sitting around. That's where Kamala's so good as well. We're sitting around. More children are killed by a bullet than any other cause of death. The United States of America. What the hell are we doing? I served in the Senate a long time. I understand the impetus of candidates running for local office and whether they think the topic can help them or not. In my state of Delaware, which was a very, at least it was a red state when I started. In terms of we now talk red and blue. I don't recall most of the Democratic presidents winning my state when I was a candidate. The truth of the matter is I understand the self-interest of a candidate. If they think that, running with Biden at the top is going to hurt them, then they're going to run away. I get it. But so far, go and look at the polling data in their states. Look at the in-depth, and by the way, I think you'd all acknowledge, and you're all experts. I'm not being solicitous about the president. You're experts on this stuff. How accurate does anybody think the polls are these days?
Mr. President, what's your message to Democrats who don't want you to run again?
They want me to run.
2/3 say they
Read
don't.
the polls. Read the polls, Jack. You guys are all the same.
Are you open to taking another physical or test before the election? Governor Whitmer of Michigan, for instance, said it wouldn't hurt to take a test.
Well, look, two things. One, I've taken 3 significant and intense neurological exams by a neurologist. In each case, as recently as February. And they say I'm in good shape, okay? Although I do have a little problem with my left foot because it's not as sensitive because I broke my foot and didn't wear the boot. But I'm good. I'm tested every single day about my neurological capacity to do decisions I make every day. You talk to my staff, all of you talk to my staff. Sometimes my staff talks a lot. But the fact of the matter is, I don't think you have them telling you that all the major ideas we've undertaken haven't been in part initiated by me. I remember when the staff and I said, I'm going to go to South Korea, we're going to get the chip. What are you doing? I'm going to get Japan and Korea back together again after essentially having hostilities toward one another since the end of World War II.
Are you open to taking another physical or test before the election? Governor Whitmer of Michigan, for instance, said it wouldn't hurt to take a test.
Well, look, two things. One, I've taken 3 significant and intense neurological exams by a neurologist. In each case, as recently as February. And they say I'm in good shape, okay? Although I do have a little problem with my left foot because it's not as sensitive because I broke my foot and didn't wear the boot. But I'm good. I'm tested every single day about my neurological capacity to do decisions I make every day. You talk to my staff, all of you talk to my staff. Sometimes my staff talks a lot. But the fact of the matter is, I don't think you have them telling you that all the major ideas we've undertaken haven't been in part initiated by me. I remember when the staff, I said,
you earlier explained confidence in your vice president.
Yes.
If your team came back and showed you data that she would fare better against former President Donald Trump, would you reconsider your decision to stay in the race?
No, unless they came back and said, there's no way you can win. Me. No one's saying that. No poll says that. Okay. Thank you.
This ends tonight's press conference. Thanks, everybody.
Respectfully, earlier you misspoke in your opening answer. You referred to Vice President Harris as Vice President Trump. Right now, Donald Trump is using that to mock your age and your memory. How do you combat that criticism from tonight?
Listen to him.
This concludes tonight's press conference. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, everyone.
I'm catching hell from my wife.